which, as those of you who know me know, is no problem for me. But I think those of you who have been here for a while, and many of you have been around South Baldwin for many, many years, know that Edward has never been willing to speak. It was not my doing, actually, it was somebody else's who finally twisted his arm sufficiently. But I think if you look around and see the turnout, it's certainly a testament to the fact that there are many people who are here specifically because Edward is going to be speaking. We know him because of his involvement in the synagogue, and no one, I don't think, has ever worked harder for SBJC than he. And all of those stories about how the Shoah destroyed people's faith may be true for some, but certainly was not true for Edward Baldwin. I give you Edward Baldwin.
Good evening. I want to welcome the interfaith group, the clergy, my friends, my family. It's not an easy task for me to speak to you in front of you, to tell you my story. I never told my story to my family, my children, or grandchildren, and I was persuaded by Cheryl, I have to get it off my chest. So here I am to tell you a short story of my life. I was born 83 years ago in Tarnów, it's in Galicia, not far away, 60 kilometers from where the Pope was born. My mother came from an Orthodox family. She didn't wear a wig, but her mother and father were Orthodox. My father was a modern Jew. He was an officer in the Polish army, and there are not many Jews who were in the Polish army. When my sister, I had a sister 3 years older, we went to a Hebrew school because the public school in our hometown were not too very friendly to the Jewish people. Our school name was Safa Berura, was the house of learning. The language was Polish. Once, only a year, only 1 month, 1 hour or 1.5 hours that we were taught Hebrew. When the German came in, the first thing was closing the schools, the Hebrew schools. My father, before the German came in, he volunteered to go back to the army because he was a lieutenant, and he was told, we're going to win the war without the Jewish leaders. So the schools were closed, no assembly for Jewish children. We are restricted to go. The first thing what the Germans did, they moved all the Jewish elite from their houses to more Jewish community, and to make room for the Germans and for the Polish what they call it Volksdeutsche, because they came in that their were parents or grandparents were German, so they were more privileged to be in the Jewish houses. The life was not easy, but we assembled. Nobody knew where and what, but always 4 or 5 kids got together and were taught whatever we could be. The first thing was we had to wear a white band with a Jewish star. We were not allowed to go, there were certain streets that were restricted, we could not go walk there because of the restriction. Not long after that, they started to burn the Jewish synagogues. All the synagogues were burned the same day. The Polish fire department was not allowed to go to extinguish or help out to extinguish all the fires till it burned out. One of our synagogues was dedicated by Kaiser Franz Joseph. It took 2 days to burn, and since it could not be burned down, they had to dynamite it. We were still living in an open ghetto. There were always some places that the Germans came in and they were catching men for no reason or good reason, either to send them out to some labor camps or to be sent away to some other places. But we had an open ghetto. The first thing the Germans did, they got rid of the old age home, Jewish old age home, and the people who didn't have too much. Then they started to bring in our town was 40,000, 45,000 people. Out of that, 50% were Jewish. But since the Germans came in, they started to bring in all the Jews from outside to our town, and all of a sudden we grew to 40,000 Jews. We were not allowed to have any kind of direct contact with the Gentile people, but somehow or another we were able to barter them. We were able to barter some clothing and food for some food, because it was not a shortage of the food. Then came an action that the Germans demanded that everybody has to bring some kind of a jewelry to the post, and they got vouchers for whatever they brought up. But it was a must, and everybody had to do it. Then we had to go, and everybody had to be identified, and you had the ID cards, certain ID cards. In 1940, when we grew up to over 40,000 Jews, the Germans didn't feel they were so restricted that they were starting to see how they can minimize the population of the Jews, and they started to catch people on the streets, send them out to labor camp. 1942, they started closing the ghetto. They closed up the ghetto, and all the Jews had to be in the walls of the ghetto. They divided the ghetto in two parts, A and B. They did give identification for people who were workable and not workable. Naturally, the first thing, they got rid of all elderly people who were not able to work. And the people who were able to work, they were separated by a ghetto, by a line, and there was a kitchen in between the two ghettos, and there was always some kind of a food. There was always somebody there to make sure that the food was divided between all the people, not too much, but with people. Then we started to get auction. The first auction came in 1942, when 7,000 Jews were marched to the cemetery and to the mountains. They were shot to death, 7,000 of them. And the second day of the auction, they gathered the people on the marketplace. 11,000 Jews, between 11,000 and 12,000 Jews, were sent to gas chamber, never to return. They were very strict. The Germans were going from house to house to make sure that everybody has ID. There were people who were hiding in places not to be caught by the Germans. Once they caught you, some were hidden. They shot you to death. There was no way out of it. Then came another auction that started to. They felt that there were too many Jews, and the auction was sent to a camp was known now as Baldwin. It was strictly a gas chamber places where there were people who never came back from that, never chance. 42 started and ended on the north. Even though that it was during the war and we were restricted, I was still able to be bar mitzvah in 1941 in a room guarded by other people that the Germans should know that we are assembling because he was right away dead. And then in this way the ghettos was getting smaller and smaller. The Germans make sure that everybody, that they're smaller. Whoever worked in the big ghetto had to go to the other side of the ghettos where the Jews were kicked out and clean out the places, sorted out merchandise. There was a big coat factory, Madrish, who was keeping about 2,000 women working. Anybody who was 12 and over, they were able to put it in the camp on the other side from the ghetto. I was then 12. I was able to go with my family to the other side of the ghetto. My job, everybody had to work. Since I didn't know anything about working, I was sending out. I learned how to sew belts, ammunition belts for the German government, for the German army. Food, we were marching out of the ghetto. We were counted back. Nobody was allowed to bring in a piece of fruit with you from the outside of the ghetto. You were shot dead right away. Then we came to another auction, was the most gruesome auction, when they were sending out, already those people were sent out to Plaszow and to Auschwitz. The parents were forced to give up their infants and their children. They would try to get them out somehow or another from the ghetto, but when they were caught, both of them were shot. Children were torn away from their parents, infants thrown against the wall. This way they got killed. That's how it was in 1943 when we were left in our ghetto with a few hundred people just to clean up the ghetto. We were fortunate that we were able to go from one camp to another, from one ghetto to another. Part of the people went to Plaszow. We were lucky enough to go to Shebnia, to a labor camp Shebnia. My father was a very knowledgeable guy, spoke 4 languages, German, Polish, Italian, and Hungarian. He knew what war is. He was a military man. He knew what was going on. He got to know a German officer, SS man, who was more liberal than all other Germans. Somehow or another, when we were sent to Shebnia, he was able to buy ourselves freedom, bribe the German. He came in with double-decker and took eight people out of the Shebnia camp. We were paid off by the Ukrainian watchmen who were then they got a few watches. They were very happy that we went. We went. The parties. We drove a while to the mountains. Tatra mountain was not too far away, where the Polish partisans were waiting for us to take us over the border. It took us a while. We were lucky that after an hour being on the mountains, that the Germans came, but they were afraid to go up to the mountains because they knew very well that the Polish partisans were there. We spent the night over in the mountains with the partisans. The following day, they smuggled us out to Slovakia. From Slovakia, we were in a Jewish agency. From there, my father, knowing Hungarian, was able to buy tickets because it was Košice. Now it's Russian, now it's Ukrainian, then it was Hungarian, and before it was Slovenia, Czechoslovakia. We bought the tickets. We went to Budapest. We're free people. We could do whatever we wanted. Right away, we went to assemble with a Jewish agency. We tried to find out. There were some other people from our town who survived, who ran away to Hungary before. We got together with them, and we rented an apartment. We were there, free people, for 3 months, or not even 3 months, when the Germans marched in 19th of March, 1944. My father felt that it was not a safe place to go stay in the Budapest because the Hungarian Nazis were taking over, and they were not such a good thing because they were always after the Jewish Hungarian people. My father felt that was the best way to do is to move out of Budapest. So we divided, my mother, my sister and me, with one train. My father was going to another train. Sure enough, when we were on our way to the place, the Hungarian police came over, checked our papers. Since we were Gentiles and our Polish papers were taken off from the train. We were put in a jail, in a Hungarian jail. We were there. We were laying on the floor, the men separate, the women separate. But somehow or another we survived. I got sick, I got pneumonia. My father was on free man. He bribed us out of the jail, and we got out of it. We were free people, probably 3 months when we were fingered. Not only us, but some of the Jewish people were fingered out that were living in some place, and the German Gestapo came to get us. We were taken to jail, to a Hungarian jail, and we sat in jail there. My father ran away. Somehow or another, 3 days later, they caught up with him. And sure enough, when they gave us walking papers, that we were able to walk at 1 hour every day. Sure enough, all of a sudden, I saw my father was there. We were in jail. They fed us. I mean, we're living in conditions like every jail, I suppose. Soon enough, the Germans came in one night and took us down to the Gestapo headquarters and asked for our papers. And she said, "Well, your name is Romkowski." He said, "You know it's not Romkowski. Your name is Elias Folkman." I said, "No, my name is Edward Romkowski." He said, "No." And naturally, the easiest way for them to do is pull down your pants. So they found out that we were Jewish. So they found